Hey guys, Budcat7 here. Okay, it is Thursday, September 16th, 2021, and I'd like to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. All right, guys, well, I was sorting through the newspapers yesterday, and this part of my job description is at this major national convenience store that I work at, we have to take the papers on a daily basis and remove all the front covers so you can get credit for them. You don't get billed for them. And it goes on and on and on. Of course, I sell very few newspapers here, and I wouldn't bother with it myself either, because nothing but a bunch of junk in there, nothing worth reading about. A lot of fluff and political nonsense, either side or whatever political vein the paper is. I couldn't care less, because I don't care about it anymore at all. But because it's nonsense, all of it's nonsense. But in any case, I don't, I scan a few articles that I might see as I'm taking the covers off and putting them aside. Otherwise, like I said, I wouldn't bother with it. But I came across this article in a local newspaper here called Newsday, and right inside the front cover was plea to help find missing ex Long Islander, and they show a picture of this girl, cute young lady here, Gabrielle Petito, and apparently has gone missing. So if you're an old subscriber to this channel or been with me for a while, I'm a big fan of David Politis and the Missing 411 books and his Can-Am Missing Project, which has a YouTube page right here. And I'm always fascinated by the cases that he analyzes. And if you're not familiar with it, obviously it's probably not going to mean a lot to you. But if you're not familiar with it, you should get familiar with it. And also Dave's research into Bigfoot as well. And you know what? I also, if you've been a long time subscriber, you know what my thoughts about UFOs are, etc., etc. We'll get into a little bit about all of this stuff. It's mainly what this video is about, the biomechanoids. But let me read you to this article and explain to you what compelled me to do this video and not the video that I intended to do, which I'll do next week. But let me read you a bit of the article here. So it's plea to help find his missing ex-Long Islander in news. I think I have it here. Yeah, here it is online, the online version. I'm reading the, copy out of the newspaper here. But, obviously the same article. So the appearance of a 22-year-old former Blue Point woman who went missing during a cross-country road trip last month are pleading with the public for information to help find her. Gabrielle Petito was reported missing by her mother, Nicole Schmidt, of Blue Point, around 6:55 p.m. Saturday to the Suffolk County Police Department, which is the county adjacent to the one that I'm in right now on Long Island here in New York. She's not in touch with us, and she could be alone somewhere, stranded somewhere in the wilderness, and she needs help, Schmidt said in a news conference Monday. Petito was last known to be in the Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming in late August. Okay, so to get into the particulars about, the car that she was driving, or she was in, or driving her car, perhaps. But here's the Grand Teton National Park here in Wyoming, and it contains a lot of the characteristics which David Politis would often mention in his lectures about a lot of granite being around, water. These sort of things are around when these things occur. But here's what it looks like. Just beautiful country out there. I've been there to the Rockies myself, and it's just unbelievable. Just beautiful, amazing place. And it's got a lot of the things that David Politis will also go over in his lectures. But let me speculate on this a little bit and jump the gun. I'm sure a lot of people who are fans of David Politis are already contacting him about this. This girl disappeared in this national park. Of course, the boyfriend, this name is Laundry. Her boyfriend, his name is Laundry. Last name is Laundry, but in any case, the boyfriend did something very stupid if he's innocent, but you can almost understand maybe why he might do what he did. I'm almost speculating on this because they haven't even launched an investigation yet. So we haven't heard about any search efforts or anything like that. So we really don't know anything about the case. And for all we know, the boyfriend might be totally, you know, to blame for whatever happened. But so far, we don't know that. He evidently is probably claiming innocence, not answering any questions or anything. So I'm very suspicious of that. He didn't report his girlfriend being missing there from the park and drove from there back to Florida from Wyoming, where they live. It's relocated from Long Island, New York here. That's why the story's so big here. So why did he do that if he's not guilty of doing something? Well, it could be that he's scared. Certainly, if the circumstances occurred where, let's say, they were hiking or something like that, and the guy's hiking with his girlfriend there, and he turns around and she's just not there. Okay, well, how do you explain that? And after looking for her a little bit, just inexplicably disappears like that. Okay, it's just some of the sets of circumstances in these missing 411 cases that David Politis talks about. And this sort of thing happens, whereas some other people would immediately call the park police or sheriff's department, whoever's around, authorities, whatever. This guy ran, probably scared that he's going to be blamed for it or whatever. So he's already confused and screwed up about it, and now he's got to explain what happened, and he has no idea. He's totally befuddled himself. He doesn't want to get blamed. There's nothing worse than losing your girlfriend there and then getting blamed for it. You have nothing to do with it. Something like that happens, just missing out of nowhere and disappeared into thin air. How do you explain all this stuff? So I don't know, but I think we're going to end up finding out that was, I'm sort of leaning that way. I'm going to find out that, they were hiking there in Grand Teton, and it just turned around. His girlfriend wasn't there all of a sudden, and she's gone. And, he's scared to report it to police, whatever, and then ran home to Florida there to find out what he should do about it or whatever. So in the meanwhile, the girl's mother reported it to the Suffolk County Police out here on Long Island, and they did their own sort of inquiries and whatnot. So we don't know, but I'm speculating on it. But I think we're going to find out that this may be another one of these missing 411 cases. And the reason why I'm mentioning this at all, and what it has to do with the biomechanoids, is that, I believe, this is what I believe, and I might as well get it all. I'm just going to go through it all in this video here of what I think is going on here from, all the nuts and bolts of it and everything, because you're not going to hear it anywhere on YouTube. You're not going to hear it you're not going to hear anything like this. What you're going to hear is all the traditional stuff that you've heard on, the History Channel and seen on TV and heard on the radio and all this kind of other stuff, and official disclaimers, although it seems to be that, with the recent release of the Pentagon footage of UFOs, is, they know there's something out there, but nobody's thinking of it in the way that I think of it. And it's not my original ideas. It was a guy, Trevor James Constable, that wrote this book, They Live in the Sky. Okay. and Wilhelm Reich and what he believed UFOs were all about. This sort of crazy genius here that is a little screwy or whatever. But the only difference is that I believe that where Constable believed that there were not only living creatures in space and in our atmosphere, but there were also ships too. We're going to read from some of this, just an excerpt from this book, because again, this is what I believe, and I'm kind of curious because Dave Politis belongs to MUFON, and they talk about UFO and this and that and the other thing, but they never seem to bring up any of this because it is part of the lore of ufology, I guess, and there's virtually no discussion about it at all, just period. Whatever it is that Reich believed, and what Constable here believed, and attempted to prove with his infrared imaging. If you're not familiar with any of this stuff, um, you should take a look at some of these things, because I know about it, and I've known about it for many, many years, and nobody talks about it. You don't hear this explored on the History Channel. You don't hear it explored on Coast to Coast. They just don't talk about it at all. When anybody who's into the science fiction genre can tell you of that throughout its the whole inception, and over the years, there's always been these creatures that live in space. It's not an odd concept or something like that. It's just a science fiction concept, but it's not something that's, so incredible and bizarre. Nobody's ever heard of it, but it's constantly repeated in science fiction over and over again. And, about all about, things that may live, microorganisms that may live on, places like Mars or any of the moons of Saturn or Jupiter or whatever it is. I mean, it's things living in space, obviously, but in the way they feel about it anyway. But what kind of creatures are they really? And, I've talked about it on my channel, and here's my video on bioluminescence, bioelectric animals, and biomechanoids and UFOs, and what the relationship is here. Here's one of these microscopic organisms, and this is what it looks like. Okay, and this whole article that I read from here is about all these sort of mechanical looking organisms that look like they were made in a factory. And you talk about they live in the waters and vast oceans. These UFOs live in the vast oceans of space. Okay, this was what Constable was getting at, and the fact that he believed also that there are spaceships or spacecraft that are also there alongside with these living creatures in space. Well, it could be that whoever the alien intelligence is there in the spacecraft know all about us and don't care or want to have anything to do with us at all. Their main interest is the biomechanoids. Maybe they're hunting them. Maybe they're using their warp drives or their built-in stellar drives, whatever propels them, and their anti-gravity properties, etc. Maybe they're being harvested for that. I mean, is that unheard of? But when I read this thing from excerpt from Constable's book here, They Live in the Sky, it just makes me think of things that I've seen before. And maybe all these things may be truth drops, the things that you see in media, etc. About what reality is all about. That we don't know anything. Has been obscured by government, the press, alternative, whatever it may be. But again, I presented my own videos on this subject, and I make strong arguments about, we have these creatures that are right here on this planet. Okay, here's bioluminescent animals of every variety here on the planet that create their own light, their own electricity, just amazing creatures and alien looking creatures and things that look like alien spacecraft, etc. Like perhaps like the Black Knight satellite. Okay, they say some sort of alien ship that's stuck there, or whatever it is. This is what Tesla saw or heard, or whatever it is. Okay, well, let me propose this to you: is not an alien satellite at all, but the carcass of something like this. Moya from Farscape. This is a biomechanoid, but not the same thing. This is like designed or engineered to be a ship, but it's living, see? And I told you about the midshipman fish, right? Here's the midshipman fish in its bioluminescence here, right? And all the sort of weird nodes that it has on, it doesn't have a candle burning inside of it, it's producing light off of all these nodes on its body. It's just, light has a lot to do with the UFOs, right? A weird alien looking type fish, all right, that produces its own light, all right? Biomechanoids like Moya. It's not a far out idea, right? But maybe these are some of the truth drops. And reading about Constable's book there about, what he's seeing and thinking and hearing and what he's discovering, and, just made me think of this story, the animation, this early animation called Sky Whales, and the sort of spiritual side of it. It's just, here is this animation. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if you haven't, it's very interesting. Okay? They hunt these sky whales. So this might be what these ships are doing, you know? Might be what these ships are for. They're hunting these things like whales, these UFOs, these biomechanoids. And what does it have to do with missing 411? Well, I say that it's the biomechanoids that are kidnapping these people, and not the adults either. It's probably a type of biomechanoid that lives in space or our atmosphere that's predatory and hunts things. And these biomechanoids are smart, like dolphins, or like orcas. Okay, orcas have the most gyrified brain in the world. Okay, so they're extremely smart and have all these folds in their brains. We have 2.2, and about those dolphins is more 5.62. Okay, and intelligence is very difficult to measure. Dolphins and orcas don't need cars and trains and planes. They just need to hunt the food that they eat and whatever, and very specific stuff at that for some particular reason, without them having any education or understanding how their DNA tells them to do those things. But how smart are these things? Okay, well, these UFO creatures are pretty smart. Maybe like the orca or the dolphin, and they're predatory too. Okay, this is maybe just the Black Knight satellite is nothing but what a carcass of one of these things caught in orbit around the Earth, which is what I believe it is. And you say, no, well, it looks like a ship or whatever. As I just went over with you, we have these creatures on Earth that look like machines. Okay, they look like they were forged in a shop somewhere. Here's one that looks like a spacecraft. Okay, all right. Here's the different types of plankton to be found in the seas. They all look like UFOs. Okay, all of these things are very unusual, and they're machine like. They look like machines. All of these things look like machines. They look like they were made in a machine shop. Okay? Talked about all the bioelectric animals, etc., etc. So things that just have extraordinary abilities. Here's some more biofluorescent animals. The beams they shoot out of them, paralyzed. You keep on hearing about that again and again. Okay, people being paralyzed. And here's where a nexus is, okay, that I say is happening here, where nobody's talking about it. You're only going to hear about it here, okay? So you have the people who claim alien abduction, and I don't think that's what's going on. I think these things can probe people's minds. They're using some bioelectric energy beam of some sort to attempt to communicate with people, and the people's minds, their brains are trying to make of it what they can, are being probed. And what do they turn that into? The type of language that they're using is sort of like a mental imaging type language, an image type language, but a mental imaging is telepathy that they use, okay? Where this beam can be used to paralyze them. When they probe something, they can use this beam to paralyze. And Peter Davenport's always talking about that. Or sometimes Dave Politis talks about UFO reports, when he's talking about missing 411 and on Beyond Creepy, et cetera, et cetera. Whenever I hear these things, I always say these things are exhibiting animal behavior. And some sort of think tank in Brazil did an analysis and sent it to Dave at K&M Missing Project and said that these attacks or whatever, these kidnappings, these things that are going on with these people, at least the ones that they find either deceased or still alive in some cases, that these things are predatory. So if they're predatory, it's like an animal, but it could be they have the intelligence of a dolphin but the mentality of like a cat, where they're just toying with these people. They don't know what they are. Perhaps they're even, attempting to eat some of these people. They're hunting. They're practicing their hunt. The adolescents are practicing their hunting skills. And some of these people who go missing, and people who do go missing, the reason why is because they're emitting some sort of vibration that these biomechanoids can detect. And maybe other people's are outside of that range, but some people are within that range that the biomechanoids can detect and are attracted to. And they can be silent because they have anti-gravity property drives, built-in drives, because they're mechanical creatures, just like ones that live here on Earth, mechanical creatures, okay? Mechanical creatures right here on Earth. Okay, so that have all of these properties to bioluminescent, and they're intelligent too, and they're trying. Like I said, that the film Arrival had truth drops in it. Well, how are these creatures trying to communicate with these cues, these giant cue-shaped, type language, art language, or whatever it is? Again, going back to the stone walls and art language and the stone walls, they took so much time trying to decipher it and understand it or whatever. So let's say these things are trying to communicate with people, and at least ones that are adults or maybe, close to adult. I think it's the adolescents are the ones who are snatching these people. And the reason why their companions, whoever they're with, are not seeing something coming or going, in most instances, sometimes they do see something coming or going, that might have been carrying the person with them or whatever, but they can go straight up or straight up vertically and at a rate of speed where these people lose their clothing. They can be like a dragonfly. They can take off full power instantly. Okay, in which case these people are going to lose their clothes. They're moving so fast. And literally, and Dave Politis has mentioned it on the show that some of the people's footwear have been found in which, like, they were like snatched right out of their boots, as he said it himself on his own channel. The things that he says on the channel just make me think of these things again and again and again. It's the biomechanoids, folks. It's nothing that you've heard on the History Channel or on Coast to Coast or by the government or, and like these tic tac things. It's nothing to do with any of these things. These creatures may have been spawned on our planet, okay, and maybe not so much spawned on our planet, but created, okay, with so much genetic engineering going on in the past, in my opinion. Which first, corn is just blatantly in your face tells you that there was genetic engineering, and that wasn't the only thing. There's a lot of other things, including, I think, these biomechanoids. There's Jared Murphy on a conspiracy radio, okay, when I was a guest there, had suggested that these sort of satellites were left in orbit a long time ago. What we think are UFOs are these, AI satellites that are acting, on independently, still operating or whatever. But I don't believe that at all. These are like what Constable thinks. So let me read to you some of the stuff from Constable's book, They Live in the Sky. And he allegedly is in touch with somebody, whatever it was. I have to watch out for, interdimensional beings as well. But, maybe some good, maybe some bad. I don't know. But this is from Constable's book here. Andolo, your Earth is a testing ground, one of many hundreds of thousands of testing grounds in the universe where beings evolve upwards on the scale of life, working constantly towards junction with the Great One as the ultimate attainment of all existence. We on the etheric planes pass on to higher planes just as you do from Earth when qualified. This transformation on your plane is termed death. To us, it is merely a transformer interposed between us and the next level of life to which we will ascend. We will stress once more that the greatest factor in the way of a proper guess of true story of life on your planet is the conception of death as the end of all existence. Nothing could be further from the truth. Upon your plane, you must serve out an evolutionary period before you can ascend to the higher worlds. The fleshly bodies which you have are part of a plan to aid your working through this scale of existence. At your level, you must endure savage crimes, war, strife, and violence, and the Great One, in his wisdom, has seen fit to use the fleshly body as the most convenient method of taking care of this almost elemental stage of existence. Now, then, there are more people waiting to serve out their karmic penalties than there are physical casings or bodies to go around. Therefore, there is a dwelling place around your planet for these bodiless entities from your surface. These are spirits or spirit people. They are, if you like, in suspension, or their evolution is interrupted and they are anxious to return to a body either to carry out something they left undone, or else, after realizing the truth or partial truth of creation, to become incarnate again and work towards proper passage through earthly life prior to ascending to higher realms. We are in bodies of a tenuous but nonetheless real substance, vibrating at a rate much greater than that which prevails upon your planet. Spirit people are dwellers in astral form who cannot go beyond that astral form without serving out their karmic life in a casing of flesh as you know it. Communication is possible for you both with us and with the spirit people, but in communicating with spirits you may find that they know but little more than earth dwellers, in many cases not as much. They may have nothing valid to impart. They may play tricks and jokes upon people contacting them. Therefore, we can only suggest that all such communication be done with extreme care and with a reason. Without reason behind it, it is little more than folly. I leave you in love and goodwill. I am Andolo. And this is what Constable was hearing. Where is this coming from? I have no idea, but something was talking to him from somewhere, and who knows what. Doesn't seem to be malevolent that much here. The reasons for our lives here on Earth would appear to be much more complex, logical, and intellectually acceptable than the combined hocus pocus of doctor and priest would have us think. If this communication with Andolo is valid, let the dominant lesson of this chapter be that all who seek to contact beings of extrasensory means may not be spacemen at all, at least as they have been depicted as tall, handsome, with long golden hair and no dental caries. Along with beings who are supremely wise and beneficent, there are those who are malevolent and malicious, and those who may not live by any standard of values we could comprehend. Interesting thoughts there, I'd say. Adventures in the desert. And here's him going into the desert. They see UFO. Before the original booklet, Spacemen, Friends, and Foes, was published, I had arranged to make a visit to the Mojave Desert northeast of Los Angeles to try and get some photographs of spacecraft. In those days, I had not even begun to fully comprehend the significance of the information I had been given, and fondly imagined that Ashtar and his men would come down in their craft, become visible, I would photograph them, and that would be that. It was not that easy. Although it took me many months to realize it, the etheric forces probably do not have the power to manifest at our frequency level without the aid, witting or unwitting, of some person here. At the time I set my mind on the photographic project, Ashtar indicated that it would be difficult, but the paucity of my own knowledge undoubtedly prevented him from explaining exactly why it would be difficult. On our first trip to the desert, August 18th, 1956, my friend Jim Woods and I were a splendid pair of ignoramuses, and we are appalled today by our own conceit in thinking that we were in just weekend to lay bare the whole UFO mystery. Ashtar suggested that I be on the alert for an indication of where to turn off the road to Victorville, but I did not attach much importance to this. The engine overheated badly. In removing the radiator cap, my hand was flung aside and a geyser of dirty, boiling, acid-charged water shot into the air. I was caught on the right side of the face by this jet and suffered a bad scald on forehead, cheek, nose, and eye area. I thought it best to abandon the trip and return to Los Angeles. We had dinner in my apartment, a painful process for me up until 8:30 p.m., the time of our prearranged contact with Ashtar on the desert. In the 10 minutes following 8:30 p.m., all sensation of pain completely left my face, to the point where I did not know I had been burned. I also felt a great renewal of strength, a surge of energy and power. I was even able to bang my knuckles against the burnt portion of my face without any sensation of pain. We both felt ourselves imbued with a desire to go to the desert again, in spite of the fact that we had already driven over 100 miles that day. We made a point of prayers again and set off again in very high spirits. Spaceman, friend or foe. Driving out beyond Victorville, some 9 or 10 miles down the Lucerne Valley Road, we saw a red light swinging in the sky above us. We stopped the car, pulled over to the side of the road, and turned off both lights and engine. Through 12-power binoculars, the object appeared to be hovering and dancing up and down slightly. We studied it for a few minutes and were about to move on after chalking up an indefinite, quote unquote, when our attention was drawn to a monstrous cluster of colored lights moving across in front of us on the same bearings as the swinging light. Through the glasses, this cluster of lights revealed itself to be a large cylindrical shaped craft with red, green, and white lights on it. I estimated its altitude at roughly 7,000 feet, and it moved dead ahead to dead astern and out of sight in about 30 seconds. It was noiseless. We were stunned by what we had seen. I thought it was probably a carrier craft of some kind, probably from 6 to 8 times the size of a DC-6 airliner. We were certain it was an out-of-this-worlder when a B-36 or similar heavy bomber lumbered over at a greater altitude, and the beat of its engines was clearly audible. So he's thinking it's some sort of carrier craft that carries all these smaller ones in this giant cluster of things. But let me suggest that this was one of these biomechanoid organisms giving birth to its young in our atmosphere. Could it be that? I think it's highly likely that this is what it really is. There's no craft involved here at all. It's just simply these biomechanoids. After about an hour of driving down the road to Yucca Valley, which would have put them in the general area of George Van Tassel's Giant Rock Airport and the Integratron, I thought I detected a change in the beat of the engine. A few minutes later, I was sure of it as the car began to slow down and the throttle began to close under unseen control. I floored the gas pedal, but the engine would not respond. A gentle force on my arms turned the car to the roadside. Jim spied a small road going off at a sharp angle from the main road. As late as 2 months ago, we had a great deal of difficulty locating this road in broad daylight. That we should have come to a halt beside it at 1:30 a.m. in pitch darkness is certainly more than remarkable. Under control again, I backed up and launched the car on this bumpy side road for perhaps half a mile when we saw a wash with low hills around it, completely screened from the main road. A contact with Ashtar was next, and his voice seemed tinged with amusement as he said, "It was with some trepidation that we discovered you at the appointed contact time at your home in Los Angeles, and in pain from a burn on your face. An etheric force was utilized to withdraw pain from the burn and make it possible for you to come here." He went on to tell us that we should be watchful around the dawn hour and gave us the name of the spaceman who would be controlling the craft. It says to be continued, but there's no other story here. But let me just read this to you. They live in the sky, invisible, incredible UFO around us. Is there extraterrestrial life of any kind? Are there intelligent beings in outer space who can communicate with humans? Are flying saucers real? These questions and many others of equally fascinating nature are approached and answered affirmatively from a completely new viewpoint in this book. The author describes his own telepathic contact with an invisible being, and how, at the suggestion of this invisible intelligence, he began experimenting with infrared film in conjunction with elementary principles of spiritual science. Mr. James makes no claims to having boarded or flown in any flying saucers, but instead effectively advances the theory of invisible but real creatures and craft in our own atmosphere. The book is at once iconoclastic and intellectual. It shatters many dangerous myths and misapprehensions which have hitherto caused enlightened people to shun the UFO phenomena, at least in public. In place of the popular dogma of sorcery, it offers new methods of investigation based upon the twin premises that these UFO are predominantly invisible and that man is a spiritual organism. Very interesting stuff from Trevor James here. Trevor James Constable, that was his pen name, Trevor James. Trevor James Constable, I think his name was James Trevor Constable. But in any case, this is what's been postulated by these people. It's well known in ufology, but nobody ever talks about it. And that's why I talk about it, because if they're not talking about it, it's probably what it is. And they don't want us to know about it. I've done several videos on my channel about Roswell. It wasn't a craft that they found here, but one of these organisms. They attempted to dissect it, okay, as much as they could and understand about it. This is where they got fiber optics from and some of the computer ideas for computers, etc., and other things that we probably don't know about. But this is what I'm saying that it is, and unfortunately, it could be that, this poor girl, I think we're going to find out that she just disappeared. Her boyfriend turned around and she was gone. He looked for her. It just seemed impossible to him that she should suddenly disappear just a few feet in front of her, let's say, on a trail. And she's gone all of a sudden. He's afraid to call the cops or anything because they're going to blame him, and he doesn't know what to do. He's too young, too immature to do the right things. He goes running home. So I think that's what they're going to find out. It's going to be another one of these missing 411 cases, and it's going to end up on Dave's channel there. And I say it's the biomechanoids that's snatching. These people are often found when they find their dead bodies, and they find their bodies in like the middle of nowhere, and they're saying, how did they get there? There's some evidence of them falling. Okay, these creatures are probably dropping them off. They're like mice. Only they can control their flight like a dragonfly can control its flight. Okay. By the way, the dragonfly is the only predator on the planet that has a 100% success rate. They can outmaneuver anything. There's nothing that can, of their prey at least, that can outmaneuver them. So, of all the insect species and animal species, they are the number one predator, dragonfly. They can accelerate with full power instantly. They can go backwards, sideways, any direction. Okay, their mastery of fact, their muscles in their bodies are just highly specialized, and their nerves and the way they're connected to their wings and everything are just highly, highly specialized. They're weird in themselves and alien-like in themselves, the way that they move, everything else. Okay, their abilities. Okay, these are the abilities of the biomechanoids. Okay, there's probably some that are predatory, and these adolescents are practicing. They detect their own prey by their vibration, energy signature, etc., etc. So they're picking out these people in national forests and sometimes in urban areas too. I mean, wherever they can get, when they're emitting some sort of vibration, whether they be all, ultra smart people, people with disabilities, people who are, have some drugs in their system or whatever, and altered their vibration and their energy signature. These things can detect that. It suddenly becomes visible to them. They have no eyes, okay? They're electrically based organisms, perhaps silicon based, I don't know, or any other combination of thing that we don't know about can give rise to life. We only have our narrow knowledge to deal with here, and what we know about the universe is so tiny, can fit in a thimble. Okay, what we don't know is huge. Fit in a Olympic swimming pool. So what's going on here? And I fear for this poor girl here, and these things are, either, chewing these people, some people up as experimenting, they're preying and practicing their predatory skills like a cat or something like that. They're blasting them up into the atmosphere, maybe even up into space, and then bringing them down again. They can go vertically, just 100% like an elevator, right up into space or the upper parts of the atmosphere. They're checking them out or whatever it is, and then they're bringing them back down to Earth, and either placing them back on the ground, and sometimes hiding them because they're going to get in trouble from their parents. They're extremely intelligent, or they're dropping them because they're just a plaything for them, and that's why the dropping injuries are always found. And people have found with clean shoes, clean socks, and sometimes in other instances with scrapes on their feet, like they were dragged across all these things at a rapid rate, or maybe when they were blasted out of the forest, their feet caught on to whatever it was and got scraped up. We don't know, but I'm telling you that this is what the missing 411 is all about. It's about these biomechanoids, what we think are UFOs, but are just more bioluminescent, bioelectric creatures and biomechanoids that are on a huge scale that might have been created here on this planet. And like Warriors of Plasm, this book, this comic book, Warriors of Plasm, is just almost saying it, that our planet was like this with these bioengineered craft, and here they're flying bioengineered craft. It's, if you haven't seen this comic, Warriors of Plasm, it's a long defunct comic by Defiant Comics, but it was excellent. I thought it was excellent, and everything in their world, they know how to design everything. They don't have technology like we have it. Everything is bioengineered technology. Everything is living. That's why they call it plasm. And was this what the biomechanoids are about? Can we imagine if they were experimenting around with bioengineering these biomechanoids in the far ancient past, when some more advanced civilization was bioengineering corn and every other food crop and everything else, and domestic animals and other animals and all the cryptids and all those things, all being bioengineered by these people of the past, probably these large hominid species that seem so intelligent. Maybe these large humanoids in the past who lived in a more advanced civilization, who were designing corn and other food crops, etc., and us and all the cryptids and that were bioengineering all these things. Maybe we're bioengineering these biomechanoids, okay, to be craft like Moya. Maybe that's what they were getting at. It's just some of the truth drops that you find, okay? Whether these truth drops express themselves because somebody knows, or they express themselves because it's in our history, it's ingrained in our DNA, and it keeps on coming up again and again and again, okay? Biomechanoids, okay? They're snatching these poor people, and unfortunately, I think that some of these people are either let go while these creatures have them up in space, or are so far away from the area, or the over open ocean, or the Antarctic, or something like that, where they're never to be found ever again. Places, so many other remote places they go to that nobody's searching for them there. They might be found years and years later, who knows, but and what's the circumstances of the death. Like David Politis and some of these investigators never know what the cause of death is. These people are taken up into like space in an instant and brought back down again, all within like seconds. Okay, they sort of Earth leave down there. They were up in space for like a second, and they were brought back down again. What they could do to your mind, a kind of shock to your mind that could be. But I fear what may have happened to this poor girl. If it turns out, when we don't know yet, I'm only speculating that the boyfriend says something like this, that they were hiking, he turned around and she was gone. All of a sudden, he looked for her in the immediate area. He couldn't figure out where she could have gone to so fast. He heard nothing, saw nothing or whatever it is, just disappeared, vanished, vaporized into thin air. And he was afraid to call the cops or anything. He went home to figure out what the best thing to do about it was, or he was scared to tell anybody. And I think that's what we're going to find out. And it's going to end up being one of these missing 411 cases for David Politis and Can-Am Missing Project. I think that's what we're going to hear about. And I'm telling you, folks, don't listen to the History Channel. Don't listen to all these things, all the time wasted and energy wasted on trying to figure out if these things are craft from some other more technologically. It's all ridiculous, okay? Anybody to come here, just like we would go somewhere else, we would attempt to communicate, we would say hi, we would say we're friendly, we would say, this is the average. This is what most likely would happen, okay? Or, like Stephen Hawking says, it would be conquest. And it would be quickly done. Nobody would get into government and all those things. All those things are all rabbit holes for you to go down. More rabbit holes, whatever they are, okay? These things are living creatures that might have been invented in the ancient past, or bioengineered in the ancient past, a different kind of life form that can live in space. It can live on its own and replicate on its own. It could be, or maybe they're all throughout space and they're just everywhere in space, okay? Because space is a vast ocean, so it's filled with all kinds of living creatures, big and small. So, anyway, guys, I had to do this video and talk about the biomechanoids again, okay? What I think they possibly could be. It's just, after what I've heard and what's been said, all the things I just said in this video here, it's just the possibility seems as such that these are just living creatures that live in space or the atmosphere, and that these people are being snatched by these things. There is no other explanation, okay? If you're going to say they're being kidnapped by the Greys or the reptilians, they're not. They're not. And then what, redeposited again? Or they're throwing them off the side of the ship or something like that? Really, super intelligent beings from another world were doing that? I don't think so, okay? So, look, guys, think about it a little bit, all right? And if you're into missing 411, then really think about it a little bit, all right? It's these biomechanoids, okay? Biomechanoids. All right, here's one right here. What is it? Is it a saucer? What are these things? They're producing their own light. They're bioluminescent creatures. They may even, some of the communication could be by light, by this neural beam that they extend out of them. What are these beams that they're shooting out of them? Well, it's causing paralysis, What is this thing? All right. Biomechanoids. Biomechanoids, folks, not spacecraft. Living creatures, all different kinds of species. Some of them are probably going to be like, sheep and antelope and deer, and some of them are going to be like lions and tigers and bears. Okay? And it's just truth drops. All these things are truth drops. They're not craft. They're biomechanoids. Creatures that look mechanical. They look mechanical. Okay? Their abilities are amazing. amazing abilities. Alright? Biomechanoids. Even this thing, the cuttlefish. Camouflage. They camouflage. David Politis talks about, one time there's some reporter went walking when it's some on the site there on the scene, and she heard some guy yelling for help, probably inside. These biomechanoids probably have casings that cover up their faces or their mouths wherever they ingest stuff. They probably have a covering for that, and something could be inside there, something small enough. They're curious about us because we're intelligent. They read our energy signatures. Okay? What are these things? Clusters. Clustering like birds, okay? Herds, groups, okay? Not spacecraft. Things that live in the atmosphere, that live in space, okay? The Black Knight satellite, just the dried out old husk of a biomechanoid. Biomechanoid. And in a way, the midshipman fish here, which it's light nodules all over its body, producing light and electricity in its body, whatever, they're also like biomechanoids. Very weird biomechanoids with light nodes on your bodies that make them look like this. Alright? Alright, guys. Well, anyway, I thought you might be interested in hearing about that article there and maybe want to follow the case as it develops. I intend to, and it seems like it's very high possibility that turns out to be one of these missing 411 cases. We'll be hearing Dave talk about it on Can-Am Missing Project before you know it, because I think that's what's going to be explained by the boyfriend there. They were hiking on a trail. She went ahead or were behind him or whatever. She disappeared for a second, a point of separation, like Dave Polite says. There was some point of separation, and during this point of separation, she disappeared into thin air in Grand Teton, I think. So, I don't know, guys, but it seems like one of these places where this could occur that Dave Politis always talks about. But anyway, think about it, folks, and think about the biomechanoids. Keep thinking about the bio. Don't listen to anything you hear on the History Channel. Much of what you hear on Coast to Coast is a bunch of crap. Just guys making money with their fantasies and all this kind of stuff. I'm trying to boil it down to something tangible that seems very understandable. All right? Maybe these things were created right here on this planet because this is where all the life is, right? So that we know about for sure. You know, we have all these animals that are like machines that create their own light, are amazing, their abilities and everything. So, look, think about it. Okay, UFOs are not spaceships from other planets with little green men in it. They're biomechanoids. They're things that live in space. Things that live in space. They look like machines, but so do these animals. I show you again and again on how these things look like machines and are built like machines. Look like they were made in a machine shop. Alright, so think about it, folks. I just want to bring an article to your attention, and maybe if you want to follow it and follow up on it, we'll see how it goes. And I bet you this is what we're going to find out. And I'm telling you, these poor people are snatched by these biomechanoid, killed because they're like cats. They're predatory animals. They have animal, even though they're very intelligent, like a dolphin or whatever, they don't, the adolescents are going to be brutal with living creatures and whatnot, whereas the adults may try to communicate. All right, and the nexus is with the sleep paralysis is that's what they're saying. It's sleep paralysis, and it's not. It's this paralysis beam that these creatures are emulating. Okay, they call it sleep paralysis. That's right. The people are paralyzed by the beams that these things are emitting. That's why the scientists are saying it's sleep paralysis, but they're wrong too. See, both sides are wrong. Okay, on one side, if people think they're being kidnapped, they're not being kidnapped. They're being probed by the minds of these creatures, these biomechanoids. They're intelligent, like dolphins, like orca. They're intelligent creatures, but they're predatory. And, they see people like a toy. We're not, we see airplanes, the UFOs do, the biomechanoids do. They see a plane as a toy for them to play with. Ships and toys are for things for them to play with. And same with human beings, with the adolescent. They may be practicing their predatory skills. The adolescents are, not the adults. Okay? So, anyway, guys, just think about all the things I say about UFOs, about biomechanoids, about missing 411. Trying to put it all together and have a reasonable, rational explanation for it. One day I'm going to write to Dave. So far, everybody's written to him about a million different things, but nobody's written to him about this. And somebody should, and I think I'm gonna. He needs to hear it, okay? He's a member of MUFON or whatever. Well, then he should know about things that live in space and that they're predatory. There's probably a lot of different species of these things, and they're all getting preyed upon. They're all getting preyed, they prey upon each other, okay? They look like they were made in a machine shop. Animals. All right? Think about it, folks. And think about and pray for this poor girl. I hope they find her. Maybe they'll find her. I don't know about at this point if they'll find her alive, but maybe at least they can recover her body. And if it's one of these things where she's dropped in the middle of nowhere, like, and she's got a broken neck or whatever it is, well, how did her boyfriend do that? Probably at a place that nobody could get to, up thousands of feet, whatever it is, and miles away from the area. But I got a strong suspicion that that's how this case is going to turn out. I really do. I really do. But pray for the poor girl. Anyway, guys, think about these things. Think about UFOs. Think about Mission 411. What I say, I'm telling you, anybody else telling you something different or what UFOs are is full of crap. That's all bullshit, folks. This is what they really are, because this is what they never talk about. See, it's real simple. Like Voltaire, in a way, similar, same difference. Okay? You want to know who rules over you, find out who you can't criticize. Okay? So, you want to find out about what UFOs really are? Well, figure out what they're not talking about. And this is what they're not talking about. Okay? They live in the sky. They live in the sky. Not spacecraft. Not spacecraft. Unless they're being hunted. Like sky whales. They're hunted. If you haven't seen this animation, it's pretty freaky, especially the end part. I'll put a link to it. You'll enjoy it. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, all right, guys. Bugcat7 signing off. Peace.